Midnight on Earth podcast with your host, Jake Weaver. Engineered by Cedric Swan. Hey, everybody. We are back with another episode of Midnight on Earth. I'm your host, Jake Weaver, and we're here to bring you more knowledge, more light, and more love. Yet another incredible guest. We work very hard to bring you the best guests, and also the best guests are attracted to us. We have another one. Mathew McKay is here, and he's going to be talking about his most recent book, Lessons from the Afterlife, a Deep Knowledge Meditation Handbook. It's an incredible book. It's about meditation, channeling, and so much more. And we're going to talk to him in just a second. But first, I need you to do something for me. Follow me on Instagram at midnight_on_earth. That is the address. You can follow me there. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you go to get your podcasts. Click that button that connects us so you know exactly what's going on. When people like Mathew McKay come on to talk about this really high frequency information, you get that notification instantly to wherever you get that notification. And lastly, tell a friend, tell someone that you know that loves these type of podcasts. You know what we're doing. You know the information that we're putting out, just the best information. You know who needs it. Bring them here. midnightonearth.com. Okay. So we're just about to talk to Matt, but first I need to read his bio. So here we go. Mathew McKay, Ph.D., is a clinical psychologist, professor of psychology at the Wright Institute, founder of the Berkeley CBT Clinic, and co-founder of the Bay Area Trauma Recovery Clinic, which serves low-income clients. He has authored and co-authored more than 40 books, including Seeking Jordan, The Luminous Landscape of the Afterlife, and Love in the Time of Impermanence. He lives in Berkeley, California, the retired publisher of New Harbinger Publications, and he's here with us today. Hello, Matt.
Hi, Jake. Good to see you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for joining us to talk about this incredible book, Lessons from the Afterlife. So tell me how this started, because you have a great educational history. You've done a lot of work, but then you went into the spiritual realm. Tell me about what happened and tell me what put you on this path.
Well, it started with a tragedy. My son, a little over 15 years ago, was on his way home from work on his bicycle. 4 men attacked him, probably to try to steal the bike. There was a tremendous, furious fight. He broke away. One of them shot him in the back and he died on the street. And at that, from the moment I heard about that, I wanted to know, I think the two things that anyone wants to know who's lost somebody they love deeply: does that soul still exist? And are they okay? Wherever they are they okay? And so I set out on a really driven mission to see if I could make contact with Jordan. And so I started in the usual ways with, mediums. And the experience there was, they were reporting to me things that Jordan was saying, and there was some reassurance in that, but I couldn't really talk to him. I couldn't have a conversation, and I wasn't sure it was real. Then I went to see a psychologist named Alan Botkin, who discovered something called induced after-death communication. And it uses a technique that I use because I treat trauma. It's EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And he accidentally fell upon a little bit of a variation on that protocol. And one of his clients, who had this tremendous loss that he suffered in Vietnam, suddenly made contact, saw, heard, felt this this young girl that he was planning to adopt and was just, blown up by a mine. So, and it changed his life. Right then, that man, his grief really changed in every way. And so, people, since Bach made this discovery, people have been going to him. I went to him, and I had this experience of Jordan being there, talking to me. I could hear him just as you and I are talking now. And it was definitely him. And he was telling me the things I needed to know, that he loved me, that he was watching over us, that he was in a good place, and so forth. So I had that experience.
And that was with the EMDR technique. And that was the first time, like you said, that you broke through, and you talk about that a little bit in the book. But what was it like, though, to truly hear his voice for the first time? Because you may have had intuitive nudges before that. There may have been synchronistic hints, but this was something far bigger. What was that like?
It was, this sounds trite, but it felt earth-shattering to me. This was almost a year since he had died. And to hear his voice absolutely, clearly, plainly in the room, and for him to be telling me the things that I so desperately needed to know, it was really a powerful experience. And it did help lift the grief, not entirely, but it made a huge impact on the grief. And it gave me a deep reassurance that Jordan still exists. Since then, again, I'm a psychologist and I treat trauma. I have used EMDR for 25 or 30 years with clients. And so I started using his variation with my clients who had profound grief. And I'm not as good as Botkin. He gets about 90% of the time he's able to have clients actually hear or see or feel. I'm about 50%, but I've been able to witness this, and facilitate it quite a number of times. And it's very powerful from the other side. Somebody saying, I saw my mom, I felt her, she hugged me, and she told me this, this, and this. And to see their grief lighten in that moment. And it's an incredible experience. And I deeply appreciate Botkin's discovery, because it makes a huge difference for people who've lost.
Oh, absolutely. And in the book, you said that was a crux point. There was a frequency shift, it seems, that happened there. The grief was released and the understanding was integrated that he was still there. His soul, his light, the light that inhabits the body, that was still alive in that other place and was telling you that he was fine.
Exactly. And that's what you're saying is exactly the feeling I had, and that he was fine. And not only that he was fine, but he's watching over us. That love that exists between souls here and the ones they love on the other side, that love is unimpacted by death. And death has nothing to do, it has no dominion over that love.
Right.
And I could feel that love as an active, real experience in that moment. And that was, part of the life-changing experience of hearing him, but also feeling his love.
So how did you process that as a psychologist? Clearly you're a spiritual being. You had enough spiritual development to process and integrate that information. But as a psychologist, did you try to define that information in a different way to just make sure it was authentic?
It felt so real to me. I never questioned it. I know it wasn't an hallucination. I know
Right.
it wasn't something that was happening inside my own mind. It was his voice, and it was him communicating to me. So, I think I understand what you're saying. How do you process it? I'm a person of science. I've done a lot of research, randomized controlled trials. I've developed a number of different therapies, and so I am devoted to science. On the other hand, there is a fair amount of scientific evidence that the soul can exist outside the body.
Absolutely.
That I think, is been out there for quite a while. And one of the things that has influenced me a lot is Michael Newton's work, Journey of Souls. And Newton is was a psychologist like me, a behavioral psychologist, and he was a really good hypnotist. And he hypnotized people back to past lives to see if he could find sources for trauma in past lives, and that was helpful to some of his clients. And here again, it was a mistake, just like Botkin. He made a little mistake, and he progressed the person to the end of that past life, and boom, they popped out of that past life and into the life between lives, and began to describe to him a world that he had no knowledge or understanding of in great detail. And he was fascinated. And so he did this hypnosis that he discovered this by accident, this life between life hypnosis, we call them regressions, with about 7,000 people before he ever published any books and anybody had any, knowledge of what this all looked like. And he didn't tell them what to expect. He didn't, they knew he could offer them a glimpse of the life between lives, but they didn't know what that looked like. And these 7,000 people, almost to a person, described the same world, the same experience. And I read that before Jordan died. And I was fascinated because this is scientific evidence. If 7,000 people describe the same thing without prompting in a hypnotic regression, could get them in touch with, some deeper soul knowledge that they retain. It was pretty impressive to me. And there's other evidence that exists that our souls can leave our body. So, and I was interested in that. Also, I learned how to do Newton's hypnosis, and I did it with quite a few people, the life between life hypnosis, and I got to witness that. And watch people enter the afterlife and be able to describe in great detail the things they saw there, and to be a participant and a supporter and a facilitator for that was really a beautiful experience for me.
Isn't that amazing? And looking back, do you feel like it's some sort of divine foreshadowing or some psychic preparation, you discovering that book and kind of integrating it and being engrossed and interested in it, and then having what happened with your son happen, it kind of gave you a little bit of knowledge prior to what was coming. Do you feel that?
As you're saying it, I've never thought a whole lot about that, frankly, whether that was in some way preordained, but it may very well have been, because I think I was more prepared for the quest to find Jordan because of reading Newton's book and having done several of those regressions and being able to kind of witness I see what other people were experiencing. So I think I was more prepared. And so it could have been that I was being prepared to do something that I had no knowledge I would need, and also to prepare me to kind of push past my scientific orientation, because I felt there was scientific basis to what Newton was doing.
Right.
And it sort of allowed me to embrace some of these ideas, and so I was ready to believe and to hope that Jordan existed in the afterlife. But now, how would I find a way to reach him? That was the question. But the thing about the experience with induced after-death communication, as powerful as it was, I still had this tremendous desire to actually have a conversation with Jordan, and that was something that opened me in ways I could try to describe, because I met Ralph Metzner, the late Ralph Metzner, who was a specialist in after-death communication and in the afterlife and study of the afterlife. And he taught me how to do channeled communication. And I went home the day he taught me, and I started. And from that moment, Jordan started to talk to me. He started to answer my deepest questions. And the things he would say blew my mind. There were things that I would never thought about, never imagined, never entered my mind. And he gave me a picture of our afterlife and our purpose for coming to this planet that I could never have imagined. And so I I felt this great gift he was giving me, and now we could actually have a conversation. He could say something, I could listen, I could answer a question back. He could respond, and the capacity to actually talk back and forth as we had once done around the kitchen table has changed my life.
Wow. Wow. So you learned this channeling technique from Ralph Metzger, and that allowed you to literally have a one-on-one dialogue with Jordan in that place. This is even more powerful than the EMDR technique. This is something that created something permanent, as permanent as you want it to be. So tell me how that developed briefly, and then tell me how that led into this book, because it seems like, as you said, Jordan has become an afterlife teacher, which produced the book. So tell me about the dialogues and what was building there.
Well, at the beginning, Jordan was just, he kind of would decide what he wanted to talk about. And he would just tell me something about, how things work. And I would listen, I would write it all down. But I also was asking questions. Oftentimes I'd be asking questions for his advice. I mean, because he really is a guide. He's now clearly my guide. And I'd ask him, well, what do I do about, his sister? There's something that's going on there. And I had a question that I was struggling with. And invariably he had answers that were really helpful, and all kinds of issues in my life I would ask him, because he, like all the souls that we love in the afterlife, he has access to all his soul wisdom. He has access to and memory of hundreds of lives that he's already lived, and an incredible amount of things that he's learned in the afterlife. Plus, souls in the afterlife periodically briefly merge with all or the divine, and have huge downloads of knowledge and information and love. And that also is part of his consciousness. And any soul in the afterlife has huge amount of wisdom to impart. So that I got to experience that, and his wisdom about what to do about lots of things that were going on for me. But then he began to tell me things about how the afterlife works, what it looks like, what it feels like there, the different elements of the afterlife. And eventually told me, we're going to write a book about this. And he outlined the book in about 5 minutes.
Wow.
And then for maybe the next year, he just, many of our conversations, he was just kind of dictating. He was dictating, and I was writing what he had to say. And that turned into a book called The Luminous Landscape of the Afterlife, which is really just about what the spirit world looks like, the elements of that, and what we do in the spirit world. And also it was sort of a book to help prepare people for transition, death. So that was like some of the earlier processes that we went through. And I mean, and he would decide, we have this mission, we're going to do this. And he basically signed me up as a scribe to write down, what he was wanting to tell people, and knowledge, wisdom, and guidance that he wanted to provide. So I was very happy. This is an aside, but Ralph also helped me take a look at some of my past lives, and some of them with Jordan. And I'd had quite a number of past lives with him in different relationships, because oftentimes we show up with the same soul group in each life, but we have different relationships in each life. And one life he was my wife, and another life he was an unrequited love, and another life we were in a yeshiva in the Middle Ages, and he was an older rabbi who was my mentor, and I was a young firebrand rabbi, and we did learn to communicate across the curtain in that particular life. So I think we've been doing this for a while in one way or another, and he tells me that we decided before his particular incarnation as Jordan that we were going to try that again, and that after he's destined to have a short life, and after that life it was our plan that we would again try to communicate across the veil and bring some of that wisdom to folks on Earth.
That's huge. It's a multi-lifetime journey. You've had similar roles where you were trying to bring this information into this dimension. You had other roles where you played different relationship people, parents, wives, and the soul decisions, the choices continue into this life. That's so huge because it really implies that there's just this greater being that you are. Like you're so much greater, but that light being that you are that inhabits all of these different lives and has all of these different stories still has its own sovereign sense of consciousness that is independent of all of those lives. That's huge in itself to even try to ponder that.
And not only do we have this larger consciousness that is really about learning, each soul that comes to Earth, according to Jordan and according to, the lessons from the afterlife, we come to Earth to learn.
Right.
That's our purpose. It's actually a very sacred mission. We are learning about how to love in the face of pain and all of the difficulties that a physical planet creates. And these are lessons we can't learn in the afterlife. There is no pain in the afterlife. Love is effortless. So we come here to learn how to love in the face of all these obstacles and painful emotions, painful experiences and events, things that are happening in our body. All of this, we're learning how to love in spite of it and in the face of it. And so we come here for these vital lessons. And then, according to Jordan, we upload everything we learn as individual souls to the divine. And the divine continues to evolve and grow because of what we are learning here.
Isn't that interesting? Because so many people assume that outside of the third dimension, things are fixed. They're static. There's no evolution, the fifth dimension, the sixth dimension, these astral dimensions, these divine dimensions. But the truth is everything's evolving except for source, because source is the all. It's outside of time. It's outside of all of that. But everything, all of creation, you could say below that. I hate to use above and below, but that itself has some form of evolution. And that's so huge because so many spiritual people really have this understanding that this plane, the third dimension, is where the evolution's happening. But everywhere else, the angelic dimension, all of those places, there's no evolution. It's just fixed. And this is something completely different.
The evolution is happening. You're right at every level. But Jordan says even source is evolving.
Whoa!
Even the divine is evolving. And he has kind of a lot to say about that, that the divine has not always existed. It actually came into existence. We could talk about how it.
Please. Yes, please. That was my next question.
Well, basically energy has always existed, and it's what he calls primal energy existed in the dark void. Where there's nothing, but underneath the nothing is primal energy. Energy is just potential. It's the potential for something.
Right.
And that always existed in the dark void. And ultimately what happened was energy, all energy evolves. Energy evolves. There's a force inside of it that evolves. And so it began to evolve and it started to take the form of light. So light was the first way that primal energy evolved into something. And then the light became aware of itself. And so this light as a form of energy now was evolving into self-awareness. And it was becoming conscious. And that was the beginning of the divine, according to Jordan. That was the beginning of source, and the beginning of God. And then the divine makes individual souls and a whole physical universe in order to grow and evolve itself. And so it makes us, and it makes a physical universe for us to interact with. And that process is how the divine grows. And, so it's really, to me, what the other thing about consciousness is it has the power to raise energy above the threshold of visibility to particle form, which are of course the building blocks of a physical universe. And so that's how the divine creates. It actually can manipulate energy so that energy rises to visible form, hence a universe, a physical universe that we can witness. So it starts with primal energy, which evolves into light, which evolves into conscious awareness, which then begins to create individual souls. Of course, we're all part of the divine. We're all part of Source. It creates individual souls and a physical universe in order to evolve further, and keeps creating new universes to evolve further and further and further. So that's what Jordan has conveyed to me.
Because the information that we're uploading, something about that is new. Something about that is experiential. It's experience-based, and the experiences of billions and billions, perhaps all of the light beings of the universe, is so varied, and there's so many different possibilities of experience that there is the potential for a lot of new to happen. And that new is what's being uploaded to the divine, and the divine then integrates that in itself as living light is evolving.
Let me give you an example.
Okay.
Loss as the experience of losing something. And we all have had a loss, and I've certainly had it. The divine doesn't know anything about loss, or didn't know anything about loss before we went into the world and began this world of impermanence and began experiencing loss. The divine never lost anything. It wasn't an experience, or knowledge of what that is like wasn't possible for the divine until the divine creates individual souls to go into a physical world and experience loss. And through our experience of loss, the divine learns what loss is like and what it means and what it feels like.
Right, because it wouldn't have learned loss had it not been for the impermanent state of being.
No, could not have learned it except by creating a physical universe for parts of itself, this individual souls, to go into and interact. And it could not learn how to love in the face of pain, because there is no pain in the afterlife. Now, all of the things that we're learning here are unique, and all could only have access to through us. And that's why it's a sacred mission to come to this place. And one other piece that Jordan keeps saying to me is that, we're sort of conditioned to think that if we're in pain, there's something wrong with us, or something wrong with, we screwed up in some way. We shouldn't have pain. Pain is an aspect that we ought to be smart enough to avoid. And he says it's just the opposite. We come here for pain. We come here because pain is a great teacher. And so pain is not an indication of failure on our part. It's every time we experience pain, physical, emotional, in every way, it's an opportunity to learn. And it's part of our mission to experience everything there is to experience, and take all of our lessons and upload them to all.
And we chose to be here. I think that's an important point as well. Regardless of the pain and how that shows up for different people, we chose to be here, and we knew exactly what we were signing on for.
Well, that's interesting you say that, and I think it's absolutely true. We were talking about Michael Newton's book, the
Journey of the Souls,
who would induce 7,000 people to explore the afterlife. And one of the things that we do in the afterlife is we choose our next life. Sometimes it's called the ring, or the place where we kind of are getting ready for our next incarnation. And in that place, we're offered by guides maybe 3 or 4 possible lives. And we can see them on the Akashic record, what that life kind of would look like, at least particularly in the beginning. Some of the challenges we'd face, maybe that body has got some challenges, some physical problems. We may have, relatives and people in that life who are problematic. And so we get to see all of that. But what we're also seeing is the potential lessons that life offers, and that life that particular life or those several lives that were shown fit with our lesson plan, what we were trying to learn in our next incarnation. And so we are offered, and we do choose among several possible lives the one that we will engage in, and the one that will come to Earth next to live.
Wow, that's huge. And here's the thing. We tend as humans to judge ourselves, to judge our experiences, to say, I have a great life, I have a shitty life. People have so many different things that they say. They look at the impermanence. Maybe they're not realizing how impermanent it is, and they're getting very attached to their experiences. But according to Jordan in the book, the all doesn't judge, nor the spirits, only humans do. And the spiritual work of life on earth is to rise above judgment. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that question because, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and, with the idea that, we come to earth to be evaluated and that we're going to be, judged as, worthy of heaven or unworthy, and, ultimately cast out. And that judgment was the reason we came here, to prove ourselves in some way. And Jordan just says that just doesn't exist. It's just not true. There is no judgment. Even though we sometimes live lives where we've caused a lot of pain to others and struggled and made all kinds of mistakes, we don't go to hell. We aren't judged. We go to the afterlife. And we go through an intense life review. We could talk about that if you want.
Sure.
And we learn from that life, but we're not judged for it. It's just an opportunity for us to learn. And so judgment doesn't exist. But what you said was also, I think, very important to me. Judgment is just here. It doesn't exist in the afterlife. Souls in the afterlife don't engage in judgment. The divine doesn't engage in judgment. Judgment happens here in these physical bodies and these brains, and judgment is part of our hardwiring. Because we try to figure out whether things are good or bad. Because will they help me survive, or are they going to damage me? So we're always thinking of things in terms of good or bad. Is it good? Like, it'll help me survive. It feels good. Or it's bad. It feels bad, and it's going to threaten me. So we're always we're hardwired to think about that. And so we're always trying to figure out, is this good or bad? Is this good or bad? And eventually it shifts from, is this good or bad, as in, will it help me survive or not, into a moral dimension. And we begin to have religions that are identifying behaviors as good or bad in a moral sense, and judging people as good or bad in a moral sense. And it is that judgment. And I'm not saying it's specifically religion that does this, but we're hardwired to make those judgments. But it's that aspect of our way of looking at the world and organizing the world that actually leads to evil. Evil comes from judgment.
Yes.
Evil comes from casting people out, from disenfranchising them, from dehumanizing them, from saying that they're bad. And we're good, they're bad. And so tribalism at its root is very problematic, because if you're in the tribe, you're good. And if you're outside of the tribe, you're bad. Right. You're bad. You're unworthy. You're not human. We can do anything to you. We can rob you. We can steal from you. We can enslave you. We can, we can do anything to you because you're not human. And so this idea of good or bad and how it translates into tribalism, is really problematic in our world, and it leads to evil. Evil is basically disconnection. Instead of being all one, which we are, instead of realizing that we're all one and all connected by love, we disconnect and say, "Oh, well, this person's bad, so they're evil, and we can cast them out." Or this other group, this other tribe is bad, we can cast them out. We can disconnect. So that's where evil comes from. That's where wars come from. That's where all kinds of damaging behavior comes from. And so Jordan has been very, very clear about that judgment really is the source of evil.
And is it because the world itself and this third dimensional experience is, in a sense, an illusion. And in that place where Jordan is and the other spirits and the divine, they know that everything's a part of the divine plan. And they also know that this place is an illusion. So therefore, all of the energy related to what we perceive as judgment can't even possibly exist in that place.
Well, that's another important issue that you're raising. I mean, is this an illusion? I mean, Jordan's position is that souls live in the afterlife and incarnate into a physical universe that actually physically exists. The universe, he says, actually physically exists in order to learn and in order to share that learning. If, for example, if it's an illusion and like we're all just dreamers and we're all dreaming a different universe, actually that wouldn't work for learning, because we're actually learning from each other and learning by sharing this physical universe and all the stuff that happens here. Now, the reason it feels like it could be an illusion is because when we incarnate, we forget everything. We go through an amnesia. The soul has to forget everything. Because think about it. If we came here and we go, oh yeah, well,
back again,
I'm dying and I'm going to go to my soul group and everything's going to be cool. I know where I come from. I can remember these past lives. But we're a little repertory theater, company. We just come. We have this little life, this little play that we're in. We wouldn't take it too seriously. So we need the amnesia in order to take seriously everything that happens to us. For example, would we experience loss if we knew that person for sure was still existed in the afterlife? Would we grieve? So these experiences that are so vital to our learning and our growth and our evolution as souls, those experiences are only possible if we forget where we came from.
Yes, that's true. And I personally tend to subscribe to the Hermetic idea of the divine paradox, where this place is both real and not real at the same time. How could that be? It's a divine paradox. It's outside of our understanding, but this place is both very real and extremely real and actually real, and perhaps a total illusion within the mind of God at the same time. But as spiritual beings, we have to be the light, serve while we're here, and make this place the best place it can possibly be. Like, do the work.
Yeah. Well, what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me, at least in terms of things Jordan has said about time. In the afterlife, in the spirit world, we can watch the entire evolution of the universe. We can see all of the physical universe evolve from the Big Bang to the very end, its very end. So we can watch the whole thing, and we can watch Earth evolve from beginning to end, or from human beings from the first conscious human who was where soul incarnated into that body, into the end of our era as people on this planet. We can watch all of that. But the thing that's sort of interesting is that based on individual, so we can see what's happening, but then individual choices, we're making all kinds of individual choices that will actually impact time and will actually impact what looks like it should have happened.
Right.
And so that's how it's the paradox of real and unreal. It's like, it's kind of unreal because it could change. And it also is real because there is a physical universe in which things are happening. But we can watch all of that from the afterlife, and all of time is contained in the afterlife, and we can observe it from there. But it changes and can evolve. For example, choices we're making now about our planet and how to protect it could have a very big impact on how long and in what way the Earth survives. And so there's a likelihood of certain things happening, but they can actually literally change based on millions, billions of choices that souls make.
Wow. So it's not permanent, right? You get like this idea. This is what I also say about prophecy. I see prophecy, people put a lot of stock in biblical prophecies and other prophecies, but I've always saw prophecy as someone looking at a potential timeline and saying, if we don't do X, Y, and Z, then we might end up in this timeline. It's looking that way, but if we do X, Y, and Z, we can avert that timeline. I've always felt like they were warnings.
That's exactly right. And the same is true for an individual life. So again, we were talking about going to the ring where you choose a life. And you can see potential or tendencies for that life. But the further out you go in that lifespan, the less connection there is between what is potential and what actually happens because of free choice, free will. And so we're making all kinds of choices in that life which alter what was the likely outcome. And what we witness as the likely outcome before we make that choice, choose that life, could look very different based on a bunch of choices that we make in the course of that life.
Yes, absolutely. And it makes me think of Bob Marley, the legendary reggae singer, in his song One Love. He has this incredible lyric. He said, let's come together to fight this holy Armageddon. So when the man comes, there will be nothing due. Does that make sense? So if Armageddon, this revelation prophecy, was real, but instead before that happens, we choose to unite as humans and love each other again and just be that great planet that we can be. When the cycle of revelation happens, then it's like, hey, the divine's here. We're great. Everything. There's no reason to end the world. From that perspective, it makes me think about that. We have that potential because we're so connected to the divine. We're writing this with our subconscious, our spirit, our light being. We're creating and co-creating this reality in real time at the same time. We're writing this. We can write anything that we want when we get a hold of that reality writing power, you could say.
That's absolutely true from what I understand from Jordan. That is exactly how it works. We are writing it as each day of our life, each moment of choice that we face. All day long, we're facing moments of choice. I'm not talking about, what career am I going to have or where I'm going to live. I mean, moments of choice where you decide how you're going to treat somebody or how you're going to talk to them, or, whether you're going to bring love to that interaction or anger or rejection or withdrawal or whatever. Those are moments of choice. And all day long, we are facing those moments of choice, and our life is built on those moments of choice. And they all aggregate to finally a direction our life takes. And things happen that might not have happened. And things don't happen that we expected to happen or that we're expected to happen. So and all of that is built on each of these choices we're making all day long.
Right. Which, again, if we get a hold of that power collectively, then we can choose to make this planet the best planet it can possibly be. We have that power to choose collectively to manifest a heaven on earth, or at least a united earth where we're all together in love with each other again.
And the more we climb above tribalism and begin to recognize that we're all connected, that we're all one, we all belong together. We are all God together.
Yes.
The more we move toward that, the more we will save the planet.
Absolutely.
We and the planet are one.
Yes. We're one with all matter. We're one with all light beings. We are not our body. We're in our body. We're light beings. We're the living light. That's us. We're not these physical meat suits, you could say. So when humanity realizes that we are all light beings, and no matter how our physical body shows up, ancestry, age, gender, any of that, nothing matters except for the fact that we're living light. When we realize that collectively and we open that awareness, that's the great equalizer. Then boom, we're there. We're all one. We're living light.
And that seems absolutely true to me. And one of the ways Jordan sort of talks about that is he talks about love as this gravitational force that connects everything, connects atoms, connects the solar system, all of consciousness, connects the living and the dead. So love is the connection. And so every act that connects us to each other and to everything that is. Every act that connects us is an act of love. And every act that separates us is the opposite of love.
And if you notice, in mainstream society on Earth, there's a lot of separation energy. There's a lot of separating forces that are dividing humanity instead of helping us realize that truly we're all one human family. We're the universal family of living light. We're connected to all the other light beings in the universe, including the planets that are living light beings. We're all just that light being family. But as we're here on this planet, as these individuated souls, there are some challenges and pitfalls to face. And in the book, Jordan mentioned that your souls, or really any soul in a human body, is in a struggle to fight the cravings for pleasure, substances, and sexual desire. And I'm sure other things like that. Can you talk about that more? Because we're in this physical body, and the physical body has its own desires, its own needs, and it pulls on the energetic mind. And then the mind thinks that those desires, those cravings are coming from the light being, but really it's coming from the physical body. And that's part of our journey. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, one thing just to be clear is that only part of our soul energy incarnates into our body. Part always remains in the afterlife. And we can actually communicate to that part in the afterlife. There are certain methods of doing that. And so part of our energy is always there, always still there, always connected with love. And part of our energy enters these bodies. But these bodies are like bucking broncos. You know, you get in the saddle, you know, and the body is just, you know, telling you what to do. It has all kinds of cravings. It wants certain kinds of pleasure. It keeps directing you toward things. I want that. I want that. I want that. It has all kinds of aversions. Oh, that doesn't feel good. That's bad. Let's stay away from that. Don't do that. So the pleasure seeking and the aversions that are sort of built into our bodies oftentimes kind of run the show. And kind of take control of our lives. And souls who are kind of early in the incarnational cycle, you know, that haven't had many lives, are often really struggling with this body, because this body is very demanding. And not only is the body demanding, it wants certain pleasures and it has certain things it seeks and certain things it doesn't want and nothing to do with. We have this ego, and the ego is the need to feel important. And that's part of that sort of hardwired in us, because people who are important and are, you know, revered by other people and are seen as valuable are more likely to survive. And so that's hardwired, you know. So there's a part of us that wants recognition, wants to be seen as important and valuable, and therefore our ego keeps driving us to do things that will help us be seen as important and valuable, because that's a survival strategy for the body. And so we have all these demands. The ego's telling us to, you know, seek power, seek attention, seek approval. Our bodies are telling us what to seek and what to avoid. And so that's the bucking bronco. That's the part of us that we really come here, and oftentimes we're just kind of managed by all this stuff that's going on physically. And so learning that we actually have another part to us, not just our body, but our eternal soul, and that part has a different agenda. That part came here to learn, to grow, to love. And sometimes learning and growing and loving means doing things that are painful when our body doesn't want to do it. Or sometimes it means forgoing things that are pleasurable, because love would have us do something else. And sometimes it means not pursuing, the drives of ego for attention and approval, but doing something else because love would have us do something other than that. So our higher self is here with the agenda of learning what love would have us do, while our bodies have a whole different agenda. And we're struggling with these two forces.
Yes, that's body consciousness. I talk about this on my show quite a bit, is that body consciousness. It has a purpose. It's your greatest pet. It was issued to you at birth. It's working diligently 24/7 to keep you alive, to keep you in this dimension. The love between the light being and the body is immeasurable. However, you do have to step up and say sometimes, I'm sorry, no, you can't have that. You have to realize that television, these movies, these foods, these various things have biochemical reactions that your body, the animal body that you're in, becomes either addicted to or accustomed to. And then that's where those cravings come in. But it's up to us to put our center of consciousness in the mind, which no one really knows what the mind is, but put the center of consciousness in the mind. And then the relationship with the body is a lot more manageable.
Yeah. To try to bring our awareness to the soul mind.
Yes. The lights, the living lights.
The light being. And Jordan actually talks quite a bit about how to do that, because there's special meditation process that he calls Deep Knowledge Meditation that can help us access and connect to our higher self or our soul being or our light consciousness, the part of us that always remains in the afterlife, in the spirit world. That part of us we can talk to and we can learn to connect to and have conversations with, and can get the wisdom from the part of us that always lives in the afterlife.
And not just in those situations where there's emergencies or you're in a very stressful situation, you get some download from your higher self. This is a technique that opens up a pathway anytime you utilize it.
It's a form of channeling.
Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about Deep Knowledge Meditation. Tell us about it.
Okay, so Deep Knowledge Meditation, it really derives from Buddhist techniques that go back centuries, millennia. And it is a very powerful and easy method for connecting to our higher self, our soul consciousness. So what it involves is a kind of a simple breath-based meditation. You start by bringing your attention down to your diaphragm, to your breath, the center of life, and all your attention now is there in that part of your body, and you're observing your breath. And when on the in breath, you just say in to yourself, and on the out breath, you say to yourself out. So you're observing your breath, but you're also noting your breath in and out, in and out. So you're watching. And then when thoughts arise, which they always do in meditation, when thoughts arise, as soon as we notice, oh, I'm thinking, we bring our attention gently back to the breath, right down to the diaphragm, the center, back to noticing the in and the out. And so we do that for a while. Now, before starting this meditation, you should get clear about what your question is. What is it that you want to know? It might be just, I need to know whether I should do X or Y, this or that, or how do I take care of a loved one who's really struggling and a lot of difficulty, or what do I do about this emotion that's rising in me that really is hard and disturbing, or what do I do about this craving, or what? So it could be any question, but be clear about your question before you start the meditation. Then do the simple Vipassana meditation of the breath-based meditation. And as you feel a quietness, your mind begins to quiet a little bit, it's a little bit more space between thoughts. And you can feel this openness, this sense of readiness begin to surface inside. Then ask the question. And so now we're sending this to our soul knowledge, to our soul in the afterlife, to our light being. We're sending this question. And then just allow an open space for the answer to come. It'll come telepathically. It could come in the form of a download where you just suddenly have knowledge but no words for it. You just know something. It could come as a string of sentences that, kind of very rapid fire. It could come as an image or a picture. It might come as a single word. So the knowledge can show up in different ways, but so being kind of accepting of however it shows up. I had a client who was doing this meditation, kind of asking me like, where did she need to go in terms of career choices in her life, and she's really struggled with that. And the picture that showed up in her mind after she did the meditation was of a little girl, and she knew that the little girl had been in foster care. She herself had been in foster care, and what she understood at that moment was, that's the work I have to do. I'm going to need to work with children who struggled in the same difficult environments I did. But see, that's an example of how the answer it could just show up as a picture, or it could show up as just knowing. And however it shows up, that's the answer. Sometimes it takes a while. You may have to stay in the meditation for a little while before the answer arises. Or sometimes you may close the meditation and the answer will show up sometime later in the form of a dream or a sudden awareness that happens after the meditation is over. But this is the way we can communicate with our higher self, our light being.
Wow. And this is something that came from Jordan, from your sessions with him.
Yeah, well, Jordan, told me how to do it, but it's really something, and the specifics are kind of from him, but really it comes from a kind of a wise mind meditation that actually grows from, Buddhist technology. So I want to give credit that there's a whole tradition of wise mind, and Jordan just, kind of tweaked it and adopted it for this deep knowledge meditation.
Right. The healing itself is almost archetypal, the method, but he kind of honed it in and made it functional for this specific purpose.
Yeah. And sending the message. See, because this is very similar to channeled communication. And where are you sending the message? Are you sending the message to the loved one on the other side? Are you sending the message to the divine? Or are you sending the message to yourself, your own higher self, that, the light being that exists always in the afterlife that is you? So it's a matter of the address where you're sending the message, where you're sending the question, and then the answer comes from wherever you sent it.
Yes. So, wow, this is incredible, because that aspect of yourself, of course, is connected to all information. And even as we said before, whether this place has illusionary aspects, the information that is created here is real. The information that we are, that makes us up, however that shows up, is real. And the information that your higher self in that place, that light being, has access to, is real. And it's all the information that could possibly exist.
For that soul, yeah.
Yes.
Your soul, mine, Jordan's, have had many, many, many lifetimes already. And all his lifetimes are knowledge and wisdom that soul, that we have access to when we talk to our higher self, that light being that we are. And also it has a lot of learning that's happened in the afterlife. We do a lot of learning in the afterlife, or in the spirit world, not just here. Many of us are learning spiritual careers and at a point when we're no longer incarnate, those spiritual careers may be mostly what we do. We sometimes healers, guides, creators of various kinds. They're actually science. There's science that goes on in the spirit world, and so a spiritual career involves science. Their spiritual careers involve creating new things and experimenting with them, leading to the development of the next universe. So there's all kinds of stuff that we do in spirit. Also, there's spiritual tourism, where we go to other dimensions and other planets, and we don't go physically, but energetically we can go and attend and observe these places. We can go to bardos where souls are coping with and dealing with the effects of a recent life. I mean, we can. So there's again this kind of spiritual tourism that we can engage in. So there's lots and lots of things we learn in the afterlife, not just things that we learn coming to Earth.
That is so huge. But it really just points to the vastness of everything. There's so much creation in all directions, in all dimensions. Our human minds, we can talk about things, we can postulate, but truly we can't even really comprehend the amount of just vastness that everything is, that encompasses the all. And Jordan talks about things that are very important here. We're talking about being here in this dimension, but there is a soul's mission. We are here for a purpose. And Jordan does talk about that. What does Jordan say about a soul's mission and purpose?
So there's kind of like two levels to that, if I could put it this way. I mean, one level, on all of us are coming here to learn how to love in the face of pain. So I mean, that's kind of a general reason for our entering this physical plane. But each individual soul has their own lesson plan, the stuff that they're working on. And Jordan had a lesson plan for his particular life that involved commitment and persistence. And that was one of the very big things he was working on. And he was also learning how to be more present in a love relationship, and more emotionally engaged. And those are both really important things that he came to work on. And he was very busy doing both of those things in his life, and very successfully doing both of those things. And he says that he had this particular lesson plan because his next life is going to be a longer life and involve work about trying to change consciousness on the planet. I mean, not probably in a huge way, but in some small way, working on changing consciousness on the planet. And he needed that commitment and persistence to do it. And he needed how to connect more deeply with love to do it. And so those were lessons he was learning here to prepare for the challenges and the lesson plan of his next life. And all of us are like that. And sometimes we go through multiple lives working on the same lesson.
Interesting.
And we often, and in each of these lives, we encounter specific challenges, obstacles, difficulties, kinds of pain that are designed or are likely to help us learn that lesson. So sometimes it takes quite a while, but again, there's no judgment about it. There's no failure.
Right.
There's just learning, and however long it takes you is how long it takes you.
And each soul has a purpose. We all have a purpose, even though it may take us lifetimes to develop ourselves to really unfold in our purpose. We all have that purpose.
That's absolutely right. We all have a purpose, and each life has a lesson plan to help us move toward that purpose for our soul.
Wow, that's so powerful. One thing that you brought up in your book, which I also thought was this whole book is just powerful and amazing. But one point is that, and I believe Ralph Metzger told you this when you were first learning about channeling, was that beings in that place are just a thought away. When you're talking with Jordan, when we think about these deceased loved ones, there's some energetic connection happening. They're truly just a thought away. They're omnipresent. And millions of people could be thinking about the same person and interacting with them energetically. And that is all possible in a quantum sense. When you get outside of time and space, when you get into those astral dimensions, you can be everywhere at once, truly omnipotent.
Yeah.
Omnipresent.
Yeah. And souls on the other side are a thought away. And as soon as we think about them, it opens the channel.
Right.
As soon as we think about them, the channel opens. But we don't realize that. We think of them, and actually at that moment, we could ask questions and get telepathic answers. But we don't realize that. So we just think of them and we feel sad, or we feel grateful, or we feel something in relation, or we send them love. But we don't realize that we actually, in that as we think of them, are opening a channel, and the channel has the capacity to carry communication, questions and answers, if we only knew we could do that.
Right. We developed that a little bit. I think people, when they have those experiences and maybe they truly get information, I think a lot of people, because of religious programming or just material programming, they get a little scared by that. They think it's a hallucination. It's just, oh, they perhaps didn't get enough sleep that day or something happened. They don't lean into it as they could, as you were saying. And in your book, you actually help people understand how to channel, which I thought was so cool. After this beautiful book, there's this appendix section where you talk about channeling. Can you describe that for us? Can you tell us how to channel in a brief way?
Yeah, I can. So I've taught hundreds of people to channel, and most people can do it. And it doesn't require any special clairaudience or special psychic abilities at all, for me or for anyone, really. Because again, the folks on the other side are just a thought away, so the channel will open as soon as you think of them. But the process is, I encourage people to use a little bit of a ritual. So I start with trying to get in a comfortable place, and I usually try to channel in the same place all the time, so that just sitting in that place begins to prepare me to open the channel. And then what you want is something for eye fixation. Candle works fine. Just something, just kind of hold your eyes in a central place. But you could look at a mandala, or you can look at anything. Just kind of keep your eyes there. Bring something to the channeling that's a physical connection to that soul on the other side. Something they gave you, something perhaps they had. When I talked to Jordan, I have a little business card that he had printed up that said, Jordan, CEO Omega Technologies, and he used to use that card to get into trade shows. It didn't exist. The thing didn't exist at all. It was just completely fabrication. But he could use it to get into things, and I love it because it reminds me of his audacity and his humor and so on. So that's the little physical object that I use to connect to Jordan. But just find a physical object that connects you. Begin the meditation I just described, focusing, bringing your attention to your breath. I usually, in this meditation, count the out breath instead of just note in or out. So I'll count each out breath 1, the next out breath 2, the next out breath 3, and so forth. And you count up to 10 and just check in. See if you're feeling, that quietness and receptivity yet. No? Well, do another round of 10 and maybe another. Until you start to feel your mind quieting a little bit, and you're starting to feel a little bit open and receptive. And that's the point where now we shift. And Ralph taught me this divination where you imagine an orb the color of the sun just above your head. Just imagine that orb and visualize it to yourself. And then imagine it stretching upwards as a tube now, tube-like, to the person in the spirit world, to the loved one you want to talk to. So it starts as an orb and it just stretches as a tube, and now that becomes the channel. And then as you visualize it becoming a channel and stretching up to the loved one, just be aware of your love for them and your desire to connect with them. That's all. Just be aware of your love and your desire to connect. Now, before you start channeling, get yourself a notebook. It's really important for me for all of this to be written down. So now you've opened the channel, you've connected. Write your first question. Just be aware. Watch the words form on the page. And actually, watching the words form on the page is part of creating an altered state in which this channeling can happen. After the question, just wait quietly, and the knowledge will come to you. The answer will come to you. Again, it could come in different forms. It could come as a download of just awareness, then you have to find words to describe it. Or it could come as a long series of rapid fire kind of communication sentences. It could come as a word or two, just a very brief, compressed communication. It could come as a picture and so forth. So now write down what you get, and write down the first thing you get. The first words that come to mind, doesn't matter if they make sense. Don't worry about it. Just write it down, and then wait, and write down the next thing, and wait, and write down the next thing. because the channel is open, the telepathic communication is happening. Your brain can't be empty. There has to be something in your brain, and just write down whatever is showing up, because that is likely the communication from your loved one. When you get through with the answer, write down another question. When you get through with that, write down another question, and so forth. Now your notebook becomes the record of your conversation. I have all these records, all these notebooks of conversation with Jordan. I like to go back and read them because they inspire me, and I forget some of the things he says. And so it's helpful to actually have this written document to remind you of what your loved one has told you. And you can ask questions that get advice, get guidance. You can ask about the nature of the universe. You can ask about what the life after life looks like. You can ask anything. The one thing you can't ask about is the future.
Right.
Souls are encouraged not to reveal anything about the future, because it takes away our free will. If they tell us what's going to happen, it undermines our free will and our work here. But with that caveat, you can ask virtually anything, and that soul on the other side has a lot of wisdom to share with you.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with us, because people do tend to have a stigma around channeling. They don't realize that there are spirit guides, angels, our ancestors, all helping us, and we can reach out to them, including other spiritual beings that are out there that are just want to help humanity. That you can reach out to them too. I think people are they have a little bit of aversion overall, and then in new age circles, people talk about potentially attracting like lower frequency beings or trickster type beings. Have you ever heard of that or encountered that in any way?
Well, I know some people who have argued that they exist. Jordan suggests to me, anyway, that there are no evil spirits out there trying to do harm. But what he does say is that there's souls get stuck here sometimes because they don't even know they're dead. and these are the souls that we talk about as haunting places. They may not know they're dead, or they may have very intense emotions, a lot of anger about what happened to them, or various kinds of emotional reactions that are kind of keeping them stuck here on a physical plane. Or they may not be noticing that there's a tug pulling them upward into the spirit world. And so while these souls are not evil, especially, they may be very disturbed, and we can sometimes sense that. So that, from Jordan's perspective, is more of what we think of as, evil spirits or something. That they're actually souls that are just kind of confused, stuck here, and full of maybe angst.
And anger, the malicious behavior people report about, things like poltergeists and other things like that, is really just very angry and confused, trapped and lost souls here in this dimension.
That's my understanding from Jordan.
Wow.
I know a couple of mediums who claim that there are dangerous spirits out there and you have to be careful about them, but I've never heard of any of that from Jordan. So I can't say for sure, but that's what he's told me.
Wow. And then when you're opening up that channel to your loved ones, to beings of love, that's really the only thing that can come through is that love, because it's such a high frequency that even if there are these disincarnated angry humans, or as some people might believe, even lower entities, they can't even touch that love because they're just not there.
Right. You've opened the channel through love. And that's why I encourage you, as you're opening the channel, as the orb is elongating into a canal, into a tube, think of your loved one and think of how much you love them. And so now the channel goes directly to them.
Right. It's literally that signal, you can say, is piggybacking on that love energy, which is such a pure and powerful signal that nothing can corrupt it. Wow.
One of the nice things about channeling is often you feel the love coming back to you. You can many times feel it in your body. So you're sending love, you're also having a conversation, but you can also feel through the channel the love of that entity, of that spirit, And it's so, I don't know how to describe, warming, reassuring, healing in some ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely healing. It seems to feed the energetic being. It's almost like recharging, replenishing that divine love that may be being stripped away by the circumstances and situations of life. But speaking of love, I've absolutely loved our conversation. This has been incredibly powerful. This book that you wrote is absolutely amazing. And I want to tell people where to find you and where to get this book. Website is seekingjordan.com. SEEKINGJORDAN. seekingjordan.com. Mathew's most recent book, which is all about these channelings, is Lessons from the Afterlife, a Deep Knowledge Meditation Guidebook. So you learn about the deep knowledge meditation, you learn about channeling, and you learn about some of the things that Jordan is teaching us. And of course, there are other books as well. The Luminous Landscape of the Afterlife is really the deep dive into this whole experience. And there's so many others. I urge you to check those out. Matt, what a conversation. Thank you so much for being here. This has been absolutely incredible. The things you've shared have been amazing.
Thanks so much, Jake. I really, really enjoyed our conversation and all the really great questions that you asked. So
Thank you. So much. Well, is there anything else you would like to leave our audience with before we go? Is there any messages from Jordan? Is there anything that you feel like the world should know? We have listeners now in 185 countries, and they're just loving this show. Is there anything you'd like to tell them?
Two things quickly come to mind. One is how the central message from Jordan is that we're all connected by love. Death has nothing to do with love. Our love of all of the people in the afterlife is every bit as real and strong as it ever was on this planet. And so you're connected. If you love them, you're connected. And the other thing is that we keep coming here to learn. And I had this memory of a client of mine who, we did an exploration of past lives, and we looked at 3 or 4 past lives, and in each life, the client was learning the same thing: how not to withdraw from people when they're in pain. And they, in each of these lives, they struggled. And when something happened in a relationship that was painful, they withdrew and pulled away. And it took them a number of lives until this very life that they were here and consulting me to learn that they could have pain and still stay connected to these important relationships. And so we're here learning the things like that. And that's our mission and our purpose. And it's very sacred and important.
Yes, it is, people. We're here to learn. It's very sacred, as Matt's saying. Mathew, thank you so much again for being here. Deeply appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Jake.
Please hold through the outro music. And everyone, check out the website, seekingjordan.com. Get this book, Lessons from the Afterlife, a Deep Knowledge Meditation Guidebook. It's available on Amazon. It's available actually anywhere you can get books, including the website. Find it, read it. You're going to gain from it. And we will see you next week with more incredibleness. Midnight on Earth.